Hi everyone, good evening. Hopefully this Tuesday evening finds you all well in all the different adventures that you have going on in your life. My name is Denise Rice, and this is session number 6 on the lifelong core issues in adoption. This is presented by the Central Missouri Foster Care and Adoption Association. So glad you could join us, whether you're on live or you're going to be watching this link later. Again, this is session 6. This is our final session in the series. So we are going to be talking about mastery and control as it relates to the parties involved in the adoption process. So including the adoptees, the adoptive parents, birth parents, and then a little bit on siblings, and extended family. So that is our topic for tonight. This is a topic that probably out of most of the areas that we've talked about over the past several months is probably the most familiar terminology that people have heard most often. We talk a lot about how human beings, we strive to have control in our lives, and that we often don't like it when we feel out of control or when other people are making decisions and imposing on us, and then how we naturally kind of push against that and what that can look like. And typically for our children and our youth, that comes out in behaviors where the underlying message or the function of the behavior is an attempt to find some sense of control, to feel like they have some sense of control in their life. So again, just kind of a tip with regards to kind of trauma-informed and trauma-responsive parenting is when our kids do have behaviors, is really trying to be very purposeful and kind of stepping back and trying to figure out becoming that sensory detective, or just a parenting detective, if you will, especially for children who have had traumatic experiences in the past. I'm really trying to understand what is the function and the purpose of that behavior. What is that behavior communicating? And is this behavior an attempt to regain some sense of control? And so how can we offer opportunities for others to feel like they have a little bit more control in their life in an attempt to try to decrease some of the other behaviors that can often be a challenge for us. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in and again, kind of pull from all of the different topics that we've had over the last few months and then kind of wrap it up in a nice big bow when it comes to mastery and control. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And again, feel free if anybody has any questions or any comments, you can reach me via email. It's Denise Rice, DENISE RICE, all one word, at hotmail.com. I do have a video link that I'm going to email to have distributed out to all of you. And if you get a few minutes to be able to kind of watch that video that talks a little bit about mastery and control from the adoption perspective. So I will send that to you, or that will get to you in the next couple days or so. All right. So again, when it comes to mastery and control, we all strive to feel a sense of control in our lives. And this often can be a classic struggle for teens and young adults who feel a new and strong drive to be in control of their choices and options, while still dealing with ambivalence over kind of giving up a sense of safety of their childhood and a sense of control in their childhood, especially if they came into the system as young children. They don't have many opportunities to really have any control on decision making, what's going to happen. It's usually other parties and other adults who are making those decisions for them. And so one way that we as human beings try to regain some sense of control is to try to get it and try to take it where we can. And again, oftentimes that comes out in behaviors. For an adopted person, the struggle takes place against a backdrop of complete lack of control over one of the most important decisions in their life, which is joining an adoptive family. Power struggles can become a way to feel some sense of control and in an attempt to achieve some mastery over their own choices in their life. And so mastery and control relates to the sense of personal power that all people seek over their lives. For adoptive parents, there may be challenges to mastery and control related to fertility issues, having a biological family, having biological children, having strangers become involved in the most intimate decisions of their life, that being the choice to start a family, to have a family. Children also lose a sense of mastery and control because of all the decisions made on their behalf and the various circumstances they faced, and coming into and being part of oftentimes the child welfare system. This also includes children who were raised or who grew up in institutions, or what we call post-institutionalized children. They are also a part of this group that we are talking about, and still strive for opportunities to be able to have some control over their life. So I don't think it's any surprise that adoption alters the course of one's life. This shift presents kind of all parties involved in adoption with additional hurdles in their development and may hinder growth, self-actualization, which I'll talk more about in a little bit, and the evolution of self-control. So just kind of in general, with regards to mastery and control, human beings need to feel in control and feel secure. The loss of control in adoption can have a long-term effect, and for everybody that looks different. So, again, I just want to remind everybody that, just because you have been a part of adoption doesn't mean that you are going to be bombarded by all of these different issues every minute of every day of your life. They really kind of ebb and flow. Some may surface more depending on different developmental stages or life events that are going on. Doesn't lead to catastrophic outcomes later in life. A lot of it, again, is really our own understanding of how we may be impacted, to pay attention to what might be coming up for us. And then having the tools in our toolbox to know what should I do about this, whether this is for myself, whether this is for my child, for me and my partner. What do we need to do? So again, I feel, again, what's shareable is bearable, and there truly is power when it comes to knowledge and awareness. Okay, so we're going to start and kind of go through the different parties involved. And we're going to start with birth parents. So really in the adoption process, birth parents, just like adoptive parents and adoptees, are all forced to give up control, to give up some semblance of control. An adoption for most is oftentimes a second choice. It's not typically, but it can be in some circumstances, the first road that we want to go down. Sometimes it's the alternative when our first choice was not able to come to fruition for whatever reason. So with regards to birth parents, they did not grow up with romantic images of possibly becoming accidentally pregnant or abusing or harming or traumatizing their children, and then having to essentially either voluntarily relinquish the parental rights or have their parental rights terminated by the courts, or even maybe make an adoption plan for their child. The pregnancy or the trauma abuse is a crisis situation whose resolution in some cases becomes adoption. In order to solve this kind of a predicament, this struggle for some of our parents, birth parents may surrender not only the child, which also impacts their ability to make a good choice. They lose their control sometimes in the decision-making process, which can lead to feelings of victimization and powerlessness, which may and sometimes can become a theme in the birth parents' lives. So again, the relinquishment, termination, or possibly making an adoption plan is seen as an out-of-control event to a lot of birth parents. They may feel victimized and powerless in the process of losing their child, however, whatever path that takes. And again, an unplanned pregnancy or placement in the child welfare system, the adoption may feel like the only choice rather than one of several options, or they may be mandated by the court to follow this particular plan. With regards to keeping a connection with the children, birth parents lose control over how their child is raised. Birth fathers and extended family in particular can feel victimized or dismissed, depending on the circumstances around the adoption planning. All right, for adoptees with regards to mastery and control. Adoptees are keenly aware that they were not party to the decision which led to their adoption. They often had no control over the loss of their birth family or the choice of the adoptive family. The adoption proceeded with adults making life-altering choices for them, again, on their behalf. And sometimes this unnatural change of course impinges on growth towards self-actualization and self-control. Again, the ability to feel like we have control over our own lives, and then self-actualization, kind of using our gifts and our talents to achieve our potential. Adoptees are typically not included in initial decisions or the decision-making process. In some cases they are, so I don't want to ignore that. They often have no control over the loss of their birth family or their choice in joining a particular adoptive family. Because they struggle to apply the rules of cause and effect to the way in which they lost their family and joined a new family, they may act without a sense of cause and effect, which leads to the inability to take responsibility for their actions. That really kind of ties into that sense of hopelessness and helplessness. When you have been in a position where other people have made really significant life-altering decisions for you on your behalf, sometimes you kind of live your life with this, so be it, whatever, I don't really care. I'm not invested in what I'm doing anyway, because other people are going to make all the decisions for me. That can lead to risky behavior. That can lead to seeing children and youth who, when you try to explain, if you do this, then this is going to happen, where that just doesn't really seem to connect. Because their experience, their story, their blueprint, their template in their brain tells them it doesn't really matter what I do anyway. Other people are responsible. Other people kind of dictate how I do things. And so if the only way that I can feel like I have any sense of control in my own life, I might take these very high risk type behaviors. So from a parenting perspective, that can be very scary, which is where it's very important that we find little opportunities every single day, starting when our children are very young, if possible, giving them opportunities to assert control, to feel like they are invested in their own life, that they do matter, that, again, if they make a decision, then this is what's going to happen, but they made that decision. They can't point the finger at somebody else and say, Bill, this is because of you. Not have any sense of accountability at all. That's not what we want our children to grow up as teenagers and then young adults kind of believing. Adolescent adoptees who attempt to master the loss of control, they've experienced an adoption, frequently engage in power struggles with adoptive parents and other authority figures. They may lack self-control, leading to impulsivity and a lower level of self-responsibility. These patterns, frequently passive-aggressive in nature, may continue into adulthood, which in the long run is not going to serve them well as adults. Again, having to be accountable and having to be responsible based on the decisions and the choices that they make. Sometimes if there's a mismatch between expectations and the adoptive family, adopted children may have a very different perspective about what adoption means, what it means to be in a family, or understand different dynamics, rules, and culture. All right, moving on for adoptive parents. The intricacies, my apologies, of the adoption process can lead to feelings of helplessness. These feelings sometimes cause adoptive parents to view themselves as powerless and perhaps not entitled to be parents, which can lead to kind of a more of a lackadaisical type of parenting, can be very lax in their parenting style. As an alternative response, some adoptive parents may seek to regain the lost control by becoming overprotective and controlling, leading to rigidity in the parent-adoptee relationship. So a couple other pieces with adoptive parents. Infertility creates feelings of helplessness to have a child. They can do everything right and still be childless without their own children. So it may be difficult to equate getting a child with anything that they did to deserve it. Adoption experience can lead to a sense of learned helplessness, beliefs of I can't or I don't know how. The feelings sometimes cause adoptive parents to view themselves as powerless. Again, kind of leading to varying degrees of responses in their parenting strategies. With regards to kind of waiting for a potential referral, placement, or finalization of adoption, the timeframes can be very long for different types, different paths leading to adoption, and many families experience unexpected delays and challenges with regards to this. And then with the needs of the child, there's a level of unknown in a child's history and may include not having complete or comprehensive information about the child's emotional, developmental, or physical needs. So then a couple of points with regards to siblings, and then I'm gonna kind of jump back to kind of the core triad for a minute. With regards to siblings, children are not seen as decision makers around adoption issues. They have little or no control in this entire process. Without correct, sufficient information, children grow anxious over uncertainty, not knowing. We as human beings don't like that. It's kind of that fear of the unknown, which is why most of us have such a struggle when it comes to change. You know, children need to be able to ask questions to get answers on an ongoing and continuous basis. Telling the adoption story once is simply just not sufficient, and it's not enough. So I want to go back to kind of mastering control and give you some quotes from the perspectives of the birth parents, the adopted individual, and adoptive parent. So for the birth parent, mastering control can be summed up like this. Quote, "It all happened to me. I guess I was just born a victim. I don't have much say in this." For the adoptee, "The most important decision of my life was made without my say. It doesn't make sense, so why don't you understand that I'm no good when it comes to cause and effect thinking, or that I struggle, or that I have difficulties when it comes to cause and effect thinking?" For the adoptive parent, you may look something like this. "I tried everything and still I couldn't or wasn't able to have my own biological children, so I don't really feel entitled to act like a parent." Again, these are kind of summary quotes from the original research when looking at mastering control from the core triad perspective. So I want to make sure that you guys understand where that's coming from. I do want to read another quote that kind of sums up mastering control from the adoptee's perspective. And this one says that the adoptee often feels as though he or she has had no control over the events of his or her life. Decisions surrounding relinquishment, choice of adoptive family, and information to be shared with them were all made by other people. The adoptee feels helpless and frustrated that life seems to be a series of uncontrollable events. As a result, the adoptees need to be in control of something. Often, this can become a problem or an area of concern. So what I'd like to ask you all to do just for a minute is to think about how control fits into your life, how you struggle or how you handle situations where you may not be in control or feel like you're not in control. And what has come up for you in those situations? What has been the most difficult part about kind of coming to terms with not having control over a particular decision? How big in your worldview was that decision? How did you reconcile or come to terms with not having control in that situation? What was that like for you? What was that experience like? What did it feel like? Just kind of think about situations kind of in your past historically where you have felt out of control, where you didn't feel like you had much say in decisions that were being made that really affected or would potentially affect or impact your life. Just kind of think about that for a minute. What helped you? What worked for you? How did you kind of get through and work through those hurdles, that struggle? Can you relate? If you're the parent and you have children in your home or you have teenagers who are basically telling us and communicating through their behaviors that they feel out of control, that they feel like they don't have many opportunities for control, then what can we do about that? How can you relate and understand if that's where they're coming from based on your own experiences and your own story? And then what can you offer to help them in that, in the context of relationship? Excuse me. So what can you offer based on what you've learned and what you've experienced? Again, in the context of relationship to help our children. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about self-actualization because that's come up a couple different times. So we all like to have a say in how we live our lives. But sometimes being the master and the controller of our own destiny can be a challenge, especially for those that have been impacted and affected by adoption. This affects how we develop as human beings and how we interact with the world around us. It changes how we approach this idea of self-control and self-actualization. So self-actualization was a theory that was first proposed by the American psychologist Abraham Maslow. So you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's exactly where this comes from. The theory proposed that each person had an ideal self they could become if they used all of their talents, skills, and determination. Losing a sense of mastery and control in your life can disrupt people on their path to achieving full self-actualization. So birth parents' ideal for their life wasn't to have to lose a child or relinquish a child or, have a child who entered the child welfare system. If they became pregnant accidentally and losing their child, becoming pregnant accidentally and losing their child isn't high on people's lists of dreams and aspirations. Additionally, losing control over what happens to the baby is a huge disruption to a mother's control over her life, leading to feelings of powerlessness that can become a theme for their life. Fathers who have little input in the adoption may also experience issues of mastery over their own lives based on this one pretty pivotal life experience. Adoptees have no control over their removal from their families of origin, nor placement in their family of destination. This can be disruptive to development, as adoptees learn from early in life that they have little control over themselves or their destiny. As teenagers, they may be in conflict with their adoptive parents over control issues and may participate again in high risk taking behavior, which oftentimes is showing us a lack of self-control. Adoptive parents also lose a lot of mastery and control when it comes to adoption. Couples don't dream of not being able to have their own biological children or having issues and struggles with infertility, and they feel helpless when they are unable to achieve this dream and have this family that they have dreamed of for a very long time. This can lead to difficulty in controlling their own parenting, again, by becoming very permissive or highly overprotective and very rigid. Losing mastery and control can lead all in the kind of adoption arena, if you will, to feel helpless, powerless, and unmotivated. So kind of as with all of the core issues in adoption, being aware of the issue is the first step in making progress. Identifying our feelings of helplessness and the reasons why they exist can help us to analyze the thoughts we have about who we are. Once we are aware, we can start to act. Becoming self-actualized requires courage to be ourselves and to explore new things. It means leaving our comfort zones and going beyond our limitations to discover a brand new world. It also means being realistic about ourselves, others, and the world around us. I'm going to get into some other kind of tips and kind of family responses in a little bit, but I'm going to come back because there's some additional pieces that I want to throw out there. Some might have a little bit of repetition in nature, and that's okay, because again, as I said before, that our brain only learns through repetition. So sometimes we have to kind of hear the same thing a couple of different times before it might strike a chord with us, or it might stick in, or might seem relevant. So again, I want to say that control is another issue that can impact individuals in the adoption world, especially in their relationships with each other. Seeking control is human nature. We all do it. We all have to do it, all of us. Whether you have been directly involved in adoption or not, but human beings seek to control. It provides a sense of safety, sense of security, and mastery over one's life. It's a survival instinct. So you have to understand that at its core, it's a survival instinct to assert control. Why do kids like to pick fights with us? Why do we get caught into power and control battles with children and with teenagers? With teenagers, it's frustrating because they're bigger and we don't want to get into an argument with them, but they're still displaying the same function of the power battle as a teen is the same as when they were 3. They just look different. They might be bigger. They might have more words in their vocabulary, and it can be more frustrating. But why teens get into power and control battles is the exact same reason why 2 and 3-year-olds get into power and control battles. They're trying to navigate these waters of understanding why you get the say and I don't. And how frustrating and difficult that is for me when I feel like you dictate every aspect of my life, that I have no opportunities every single day to have some sense of control, to be able to master some of the decision-making abilities in my life. So again, very simple opportunities that we can offer children and youth to have some control. Simple things, for example, with little kids, some examples of allowing them to have some control. Do you want milk or do you want juice? You set it up. They have to make a choice. They made that choice, not you. You know, simple, two options. Do you want to wear the jacket? Do you want to carry the jacket? One or the other. And we as parents can set it up in ways that we're still going to get what we want, but allowing them to make a choice, and then they feel bought in and they feel invested and like, oh yeah, I got to pick, I got to choose, I got to pick, right? Do you want 15 more minutes on the tablet? Or do you want 15 minutes of story time before bed? You can set it up, but that still offers an opportunity to make a choice. And with choice, we feel powerful. We feel like we have some sense of control, which leads to feeling kind of masterful when it comes to living my own life. They're all tied in together. You can do the same thing with teenagers. Same thing. And when one area feels out of control, it's also human nature to seek control in another area. And again, they're really kind of interwoven kind of into adoption is a sense of kind of lack of control of all parties involved. So we're all kind of struggling with the same issue, but a lot of times we're not talking about it and we're not acknowledging it. And so it's really important that we have these conversations. Okay. So again, when we're talking about power, control, and mastery, from the adoptee's perspective, they really had no control over the adoption decision. Events prior to the adoption, kind of being in foster care or having experienced abuse, neglect, and trauma, confirmed a lack of control. Conduct ranges from helpless re-victimization to power struggles to victimizing other people. For adoptees, adoption alters the course of their life. They were not a party to initial decision making. And it really kind of impacts one's cause and effect understanding and continuum. Birth parents had no control over their child or the adoptive parents after an adoption was finalized. Circumstances prior to a relinquishment or a termination or an adoption plan confirmed a lack of personal control. The compulsion to replace loss may cause recurrent and self-imposed losses. Relinquishment in particular is seen as an out-of-control disjunctive event, even though the parents had to consent to a relinquishment. Depending on the circumstances that led up to that, some folks still feel that that was a decision that was out of their control. It can interrupt the drive, again, for self-actualization. For adoptive parents, they do not control the process of adding family members. Sometimes they're at the agency's mercy if they are working with an agency. Power struggles with a child leave parents feeling helpless and inadequate. A lot of times just a lack of understanding of what is the function and the purpose of these power struggles? Where is that coming from? What is the underlying message that are being communicated through the course of having a power and control battle with a child or with a teenager? So again, it's imperative for us as adults and that our support system and our system kind of in general, we all, again, want to really practice being trauma-informed and trauma responsive, is that we have to get underneath the behavior. We have to really try to pay attention to what is the message, what is the need that is being communicated underneath the actual behavior. The behavior, what we see, what we experience is simply an external expression. It's a form of communication based on what's going on inside for somebody. So we have to just slowly try to train ourselves to not get so fixated on the external expression, but to really try to hone in on what was going on inside that really created the need for this expression or this behavior. That's really what it's all about. And again, in the moment, that can be very difficult to do, especially as parents, if you are very dysregulated, if you are stressed out, if you are in a hurry, if you are hungry, you haven't been sleeping well, whatever it is, it's going to really cloud your lens. So it's going to make it very difficult for you to be that regulated, responsive, relationship-focused parent, to understand and then respond in a way that is going to meet the need of that child. It's so much more than just this power struggle, this power and control battle. But it's very difficult, again, when you are not in a good place, to be able to recognize that and then to kind of pull the tools from your toolbox on, oh, okay, this is what I should do. This is what I need to do. So I need to find some more ways to offer choice in order to help my child feel like they do have control. And remind them and use your words and speak it and identify it and name it. Help them understand that if I say to you this or this, that's a choice, and you are making that choice. I am not making that choice for you. Okay. So again, for adoptive parents, there also might be a sense of, depending on how they feel with regards to master and controls, again, could potentially dictate how they parent, whether that's the overprotective or very lackadaisical type of parenting style. There's a sense of helplessness and a lack of services, a lack of quality services, a lack of availability of services that are needed. For adoptive parents, adoption experiences, again, can lead to a sense of learned helplessness. Since mastery is linked to procreation and having your own children, and can lack a sense of generativity. So creating those future generations, creating your legacy, if you will. All right. So just a couple of other things, and then we'll kind of move into some of the tips. We have to really remember, we have to be realistic about ourselves, others, and the world around us. So having a goal and developing a sense of meaning in life is also an important step for gaining mastery and control over our lives. Some may find that the exploration of spirituality might be very helpful in this regard, if that is something that has worked for you in the past. Creativity is a useful tool for obtaining this objective, whether it be creative thought or creative action through art and music. So that kind of leads us into kind of the last section on looking at some tips, things to pay attention to, kind of family responses when it comes to mastery and control. So both adults and children commonly try to regain a sense of control by controlling other areas of their lives. There are really no fixes, per se, for any of these core issues. And again, they wouldn't be core issues if there were these quick, easy fixes. They are lifelong components that kind of live with us in different intensity throughout the course of our lives. But there are ways to reduce the impact on one's life. Awareness, again, is key to giving control issues less power. And we have to start with ourselves, because you cannot give away that which is not yours to give. You're not going to be able to offer to assist and support and help somebody else with these issues if you yourself have not done your own work, that you have not really tried to hone in on practice your own self-awareness of when these issues are coming up for you. What are the button pushing triggers for you? What are the events in your life where you feel like you don't have much control? And then how do you handle that? What do you do with that? So we have to start with ourselves first. So some other tips: evaluate your triggers. Know what pushes your buttons. What aspects of adoption or the adoption process were out of your control? Are there certain situations where you find yourself trying to overexert control? What are situations and events where you find yourself really trying to exercise more control? You have this need for more control. And what happens when it doesn't work out that way? What happens to you? What happens for you? What happens within you? What do you feel? What does that look like? Explore other ways you and your child do have control and be prepared with choices. If you have only one outcome in mind or your child struggles with one option, only situations, have choices available and flexibility in your agenda. It's the name of the game when it comes to parenting, is flexibility. Nurture mastery. If you or your child has a talent or a determination to do something that makes you or them feel productive and proud, make it a priority. Feeling successful in one area can help ease, my apologies, the urgency to feel in control of everything. A couple other pieces on kind of what you can do, how your family can help when it comes to mastery and control. Recognize that your child has developed coping strategies in order to survive their early chaotic experiences. These coping strategies may appear problematic to you, but they have served a valuable purpose for your child, and it may not be easy for them to give those up. A lot of those behaviors that our children had prior to coming into our homes kept them alive. Those behaviors became necessary to survive. We cannot simply rip those away from our children and not replace them with other things and expect that that is going to be successful. We have to honor some of those behaviors for what they were, how they kept our kids alive in the environment that they were in, and help them relearn over time through repetition in context of relationship with you. And again, over time, sometimes a significant amount of time, help them relearn new ways to adapt and to be successful and to survive. But that doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't happen in a couple weeks, sometimes not months. Sometimes it takes years. So we have to have that knowledge and cut our children some slack and give ourselves some grace to know that this is a work in progress, that we are doing the best we can with the tools that we have in any given moment. Remember that people seek control over anything when they feel out of control. This is true for children as well. Share the control in your home by allowing children and teenagers to make age-appropriate choices about their food, about their clothing, about activities. You guys know, where are the areas that you can offer your children and your teens and your youth some control, some semblance of making a choice and having control? Honor the inner strength that your child has developed through their experiences. Provide your child with chances to feel successful. This goes with teenagers too. I say children, but I'm talking about all youth. Provide them with chances to feel successful with a hobby, a talent, a sport. Repeated exposure to success builds a solid foundation on which children will build future goals throughout their lives. And last, and certainly not least, seek support. Seek out necessary services for yourself. Seek out support groups, other parents. Talk about what's going on. Who are the trusted people in your lives that you feel like get it, who are not going to judge when you talk about how hard this is and what a battle it is some days, where you can really let your hair down, that you can kind of speak your truth and not feel any sense of judgment or blame. Whatever those resources and services might be, find them. Connect with the Central Missouri Foster Care and Adoption Association to see how they can support you in this process. You all are very fortunate that you have an organization like that in your area that's there for you. I know that they are dedicated. I know that they are passionate. I know that they are committed. And I honor them, and I honor each and every one of you for what you are doing, what you have chosen to do, how to live your life. And again, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And if I can be any kind of a support for you, please let me know. And with that, I just want to say thank you if you have been a part of this series from the beginning, or if you've kind of jumped in periodically here and there. I want to say thank you for your time. I hope that there has been some benefit, even if it's just a reminder about these areas, these issues, these concerns, and how important it is for us to really, again, kind of ongoing evolution of learning about ourselves, about our children, about our families, about our partners, whatever it might be. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Again, I wish you all the best. And I have no doubt that all of you will achieve your own success in whatever that looks like. So thank you again. Take care. And I hope we cross paths again in the future. See you guys.